Well, hello there. My name is Bradley Brassfield, and man, I love dinosaurs. And the last video, we Watch Mojo's top 20 incredible dinosaurs. And while there were a couple of questionable choices on there, at least we're talking about dinosaurs, right? But there was one dinosaur in particular that was just a little bit off with some of the stuff they were saying. So I wanted to take an opportunity here to let's talk about the Spinosaurus egyptica. Egyptica? Roll it. So on this particular video, I want to look at my guy Clint's Reptiles, a YouTube channel that you should absolutely be following if you're not already. But he is quite an impressive guy. So I want to hear what he says. I haven't watched this, so this is a reaction video to that. And let's see what happens.
Well, hi there. This is Spinosaurus, the longest and possibly the most unique-looking theropod to have ever existed. Well, unless you know about Spinosaurus, which looked remarkably similar to Spinosaurus and may have been even longer.
Yeah.
Meaning that Spinosaurus might not be the longest, nor is it dramatically unique. Well, unless Spinosaurus is just another name for Spinosaurus. And the fact that we have hardly any good fossils of Spinosaurus makes this a really hard question to answer. Heck, almost everything we know about this family is contentious. So much so that many devoted dinosaur content creators won't touch this group with a 10-foot pole. And some of them warned me directly just to stay away. But this group, it's just too cool. So we're going in anyway. And just for...
So yeah, one of the reasons why Spinosaurus is such a weird topic is because we don't have a whole lot of fossil evidence to support one way or another. We know that there's two families, or two clades, if you will, the Spinosauridae and the Baryonychidae, and named for the two Baryonyx and the Spinosaurus, respectively. And a lot of the fossil evidence is teeth, and very little other than teeth. We do have jaw bones of some. We do have some tail bones, some vertebrae from the spine, the sail itself. But there's very little fossil remains of one of the coolest, most unique dinosaurs in the entire dinosaur lineage. I think most people will think as the sail, as a Spinosaurus, the spine, as being a characteristic that is probably the one you would, sorry, I just kicked the table. Probably the one characteristic that you would call to, yeah, I know Spinosauridae. But weirdly enough, the sail was only a characteristic of Spinosaurus itself, and the one he mentioned earlier, which could just be another Spinosaurus. But the rest of them, if they had a sail at all, they were small, most of which didn't have one at all. And of course, the Baryonyx, I don't even think they had anything. But I think the most characteristic thing about a Spinosaurus is the head morphology. The head is very, very weird. And it actually isn't that unusual to something that we know of, which is a crocodile. Or more closely resembles a gharial, which is a more slender snout. In Jurassic Park 3, we saw Spinosaurus defeat a T-Rex. That would be, one, laughable because they never met. One in North America, the T-Rex, and the other in Africa and that area, Egypt, Morocco, things like that. So, could Could a Spinosaurus defeat a T-Rex? Absolutely no way. Was it longer? Yes, by some measure. Was it heavier? No. The mouth, I do want to talk about, I have this. This is a T-Rex skull. As you can see, there's quite a short snout. Very, very powerful jaws. The largest, heaviest bite force of any animal ever. 40,000 psi per square inch or something like that. It's freaking nuts. The heaviest that we have right now it isn't even a third of that. The teeth are robust and made for crushing. So we have evidence that the T-Rex would have crushed not only 8 animals, such as a Parasaurolophus, which is, I just looked down on the floor and my kids, dog hair, my kid's toy, Parasaurolophus here, not only would have hunted, a T-Rex would have hunted this, it would have crushed the bone itself. So it would have taken a bite and got crushed right through it. A Spinosaurus is way more slender, way more narrow, and those teeth are largely thought of to eat fish. So let's see what...
For the record, everything
Clint
I'm going to
says.
say in this video is 100% true and accurate. And whatever you've heard that is different, past, present, or future, is wrong.
Yeah, Clint. By the way, I do not have the...
Come and get
You know,
it!
we'll
Welcome
have to watch
everyone
that.
to our special pop-up with PetSmart Kitchen and Stella and Chewy.
We'll skip it.
Just kidding.
Everything we know about
We're all
this is
working with
you have to take
extremely
it
limited
with a grain of
information
salt for
about
sure.
this group. Our understanding of Spinosauridae is being reshaped constantly as new information and analyses come to light about this rad but extremely rare family of giant theropods.
So cool.
Now, if you've seen our video on all of the theropods, you already know that the Spinosaurids are a family within the Carnosauria clade of the Tetanurae. The same clade to which Giganotosaurus, Allosaurus, and many other well-known theropods belong.
Dinosaurs.
The earliest known Spinosaurid fossils date back to the Jurassic, but Spinosaurids really seem to have hit their peak in the early to middle Cretaceous. And while it may seem like the back sail, like this big old sail they've got on their back, is the most diagnostic feature of this group, that was really just a feature of one single clade within the
I'm
Spinosaurus.
glad he said that.
The rest either don't have one, or the one that they have is fairly small.
Very true.
In fact, the first member of this family that I ever knew to exist doesn't really have a back sail. But it did still have the extremely unique head morphology of this group. I mean, look at those jaws. That head doesn't look like any other dinosaur. Though it does look quite similar in many ways to what we see in crocodilians. They were long, low, and narrow, and full of cone-shaped teeth. Very unlike the blade-like serrated teeth found in most theropods, and even terrestrial crocodilians. I've long recognized the heads of Spinosaurids as being very unusual and highly recognizable, but it really wasn't until I got these two PNSO models that I really gained an appreciation for how these positively insane jaws work. By the way, we'll have links to
Those are
both
very
of these
cool
models
models. I
and
need
a
to
few
get
more down
those.
in the description.
Sorry,
The
Pearl.
anatomical
Hey, Pearl.
accuracy,
Hey.
at least based on our current understanding
Stop.
of these dinosaurs, is really, really remarkable, especially for the price. Now, there's a lot about the heads of Spinosaurids that make more sense if this animal was at least somewhat aquatic and fed on fish. One of those being the high placement of both the eyes and the nostrils. The nostrils of Spinosaurids, they're not at the end of the nose like with most theropods. They're kind of like, depending on which one, migrating up the head, sort of like...
Let's look at this picture here of the Spinosaurus face. We have enough jaw and head evidence to kind of piece some of it's from a Spinosaurus, some of it's from different species of Spinosauridae. But we have enough to kind of generalize what a skull would look like. And if you'll notice, the bottom here is kind of comes and then it kind of goes like almost like a circular motion with big teeth and then little teeth coming back. And then the top is little teeth, big teeth, where it seems like almost a perfect, like almost mold. And then little bitty teeth, if anything, in the curve, and then big teeth at the end. And if you look at them, like if you were to close that model's mouth, it would fit like a freaking jigsaw puzzle. It's fascinating, which would have definitely been very much a water morphology. He's talking about the nostril here. It's not at the end of the snout. It's up where you would assume that he would have his face down in the water and still be able to breathe. And his eyes are further back as well. Kind of like a crocodile, right? So, pretty cool.
You know, if you found a bunch of fossils of early whales. The eyes are in a similar place to those of modern crocodilians. And those jaws look similar to those of many fish-eating crocodilians and other fish-eating vertebrates. There are two main ways to catch fish with your mouth. We've discussed suction feeding many times on this channel. We have a whole video about it. And have discussed it recently in our video.
Well, it would not have... two dogs are fighting and one of them is getting on to the other two. Hey, Pearl. Hey, Pearl. Pearl. Hey, please stop. Oh, my goodness. This is going to be a 50-minute video. Be quiet. It would not have sucked in. So what alligators or crocodiles do is they lay still. I mean, if you come lunging at a fish, it has way enough time to move. But if you were to quickly get them like that, there's very little chance you can move your head quicker than you can lunge forward, right? So that's how alligators, crocodiles, that's how crocodilia hunts. So I would assume that a Spinosaurus would do the same.
Sharks, mata-matas, and dinosaurs that can't be your favorite dinosaurs. But we've spent less time talking about the other strategy. The one that involves long, skinny jaws like these. You see, if you're a large animal hunting little fish, it is very difficult to get your giant body to lunge forward before a comparatively little fish can dart out of the way. But it is possible to turn your head very quickly. More quickly than a little fish can go, at least very far. Which isn't to say that you can do so before the fish can move at all. But if your jaws are very long, then it is just that much more likely that the fish will not move far enough to escape, increasing your chances, well, of getting enough to eat, surviving, reproducing, and passing on the genes for a long face to the next generation. You see jaws like this in all sorts of fish-eating animals, like crocodilians, especially gharials, and the other gharials, garfish, dolphins, river dolphins that aren't dolphins at all, many birds, and similar strategies are also used by beaked fish like swordfish, sailfish, and marlins, as well as sawfish, saw sharks, and the list goes on. And that isn't to say that long, skinny jaws like these are not also effective for hunting small, quick-moving prey on land. There is direct fossil evidence that Spinosaurus fed on terrestrial prey, including dinosaurs, in addition to fish. But no matter how the jaws are used, fish tend to be the prey that originally drive the evolution of jaws like these. On top of that, you have the largely unserrated, cone-shaped teeth. These will be good for holding onto prey, but not very good for slicing through, say, large prey. Their jaws were also a bit fragile, given their length and width ratio for a temp.
1 second. Hey, Sketchy, come here. Come on, bud. Come on, Sketchy. Come on. Sketch, come on. No, not you. Hurry. Sketch, come on. Come on. Come on. Go. Get. What can I say? I'm not going to edit that
To
out.
kill
either.
large
I'm gonna leave it
prey
in.
using rapid side-to-side movements. But the fact that the jaws were long and skinny is not really what makes them interesting, if you ask me. Because they have another similarity to crocodilian jaws, in this case, those of crocodiles, that really makes them interesting. This is the part that I really first noticed on these models, and it has given me an all-new appreciation for the head morphology of Spinosaurus. Obviously, at a glance, these jaws have an unusual appearance. They have like two different sets of big teeth on top, and the biggest teeth are on the front of the lower jaw, and then rather suddenly become much, much smaller. And it isn't until you articulate the jaws together that you begin to see what's going on. The teeth in Spinosaurids are on two different bones in the top jaw, the premaxilla at the front and the maxilla towards the middle. Though there are multiple bones in the lower jaw, the teeth are all on the dentary. In Spinosaurids, the tip of the premaxilla flares out into a spoon-shaped portion, often called a terminal rosette, bearing very large teeth. But, like a spoon, it then tapers in dramatically, forming a notch that only has very small teeth. Why? Because the dentary of the lower jaw is also spoon-shaped and tipped with huge teeth. And like the fourth lower incisor on crocodiles, if the top jaw didn't taper in, there would be no space for these teeth to go.
Yep.
These huge lower teeth fit into the notch in the premaxilla like puzzle pieces of death. After the notch is the maxilla, which again has large teeth. But given that the rest of the dentary is narrow like a spoon handle and only has small teeth, there's no problem there. From that point, the maxillary teeth get progressively smaller as they move toward the back of the mouth. And just like that, it goes from looking just a bit odd to being the world's raddest and most dangerous jigsaw puzzle. And since that seems like that should go on a shirt, here's the shirt! The perfect gift for yourself this dinosaur
There's
December.
a shirt.
We'll have a link to where you can get one down in the description. We'll also be removing some of our older designs here in just a few weeks, so now would be the time to grab some of these.
I will try to.
In addition to these amazing jaws, the skull generally bore some form of a crest. They had three-fingered hands, like most other tetanurine theropods, though, as we discovered earlier this month, not like theropods generally.
This may be the last ad you ever see. Because with the free AdBlock extension from Capital One Shopping,
I wish.
And those hands had very large hooked claws, especially on the first finger. Exactly what they used these giant claws to do remains a bit of a mystery. Hypotheses range from killing large dinosaurs to digging for water, so your guess is as good as mine. Their feet had the 4 toes typical of theropods, but unlike most non-avian theropods, the hallux touched the ground, so they walked on all 4 toes,
like
at least to some degree. The vertebrae had large neural spines, sometimes forming a sail, like that of Spinosaurus, and when you put it all together, it isn't very difficult to identify a member of the Spinosauridae. So now you probably know one when you see it. But how many do you actually know? Like, how many could you name right now? Well, what if I told you that there are somewhere between 10 and 17 known genera? And today we're going to talk about at least like 15 Spinosaurids that I think are most likely to be distinct and about which we know enough to say anything useful. And how they're related. Now, I want to start by saying that most of these are known from very limited numbers of fossils. And I have never seen a single phylogeny with anywhere near 15 Spinosaurid genera before. So take the relationships with a grain of salt. But, with that said, let's dig into the Spinosaurids. And let's start with the big picture. The family Spinosauridae appear...
Before we get into the particulars of Spinosauridae, I might have to break this up into 2 videos because of these stupid dogs. Clearly, it's running a little long. So we might do Spinosaurus and then Baryonyx in the second video.
appears to have
We'll see.
2 major subdivisions. And conveniently enough, these subfamilies within the Spinosauridae are named for the only two Spinosaurids that I knew about as a kid. Baryonyx and Spinosaurus. These would be the Spinosaurinae and the Baryonychinae, though there may be a group or two that diverged before this major split as well. And figuring out which dinosaurs belonged in which major clade has proven to be very difficult. But the big picture is that the Baryonychinae contains all of the Spinosaurids more closely related to Baryonyx than to Spinosaurus. And the Spinosaurinae, all of the Spinosaurids more closely related to Spinosaurus than Baryonyx. And the most conspicuous, though not always foolproof way to distinguish between the two is to look at the size of the sail. Big sail today? Might be Spinosaurinae. Not so tall, you say? Probably Baryonychinae. Of course, the skeletal remains of Spinosaurids are almost all highly incomplete, so sometimes we have no idea if they had sails up tall or no sails at all, which makes it hard to say where they go in Spinosauridae. Like this one, Valley-Bonavinatrix. Now, if you remember our video on all of the Tyrannosaurids, you will remember that virtually without exception, they have wicked cool names. Valley-Bonavinatrix means Valley-Bona huntress, since it was discovered near Valley-Bona, Spain. This would be in the bottom 10% of rad Tyrannosaurid names, but, it could be worse. What couldn't be worse is our knowledge about where it should go on the phylogeny.
Yeah.
Though we have many fossils, we have only found one vertebrae with a neural spine on it.
Yeah.
That's our only real window into the size of the sail, if it had one at all.
We're not sure
it was somewhat tall,
this thing,
but not nearly Spinosaurinae level tall. More like that of Ichthyovenator, which we'll discuss in a bit.
Yeah.
A Spinosaurine with a rather medium-sized sail. That said, Spain is much closer to where we tend to find Baryonychines. And with a sail that is not small, but also not too big, gosh, it's just hard to say where it goes. Some phylogenies put it as an outgroup to the two major subfamilies. It could be. That's where we're going to put it, but take that with a grain of salt.
The only reason is because we don't know anything about it. We don't know where to place it. So you have to put it outside of each clade just to be fair.
In other words, we don't have a clue. So we don't know where it goes, but it comes from early Cretaceous Spain. Not the only Spinosaurid from that time and place. In fact, I think we'll talk about its paisano next. And that means that we're going to take a dive into one of the two subfamilies. If you've been paying attention, and you know what a paisano is, then you know that the paisanos of Valley-Bonavinatrix are Baryonychines, the low to no sail boys. Like this guy, Suchomimus, and of course Baryonyx. And this guy, the paisano of Valley-Bonavinatrix, Protothlytus, which is Greek for champion. Not bad, but it's no Tyrannosaurid name. And I can't imagine this beating any Tyrannosaurids at anything except for fishing. So it might have been the fishing champion of Spain in the early Cretaceous, but it would have had to compete with the Valley-Bona huntress for that title. So its status as the champion of anything.
Gina Costa, looking simply stunning. What's this?
They named
She's
it
opening her Fidelity
Fisher.
Act by...
They named it Fisher Champion. Whatever. Which is funny because every single Baryonychinae or Spinosaurinae is going to be a great fish.
It seems dubious at best. And given that we only know about this dinosaur from a small piece of the skull and a few tail vertebrae, a lot of...
This is a very good example of we don't know anything about these animals. We have a jawbone, and we have like 5 or 4 tail bones of this thing. But with that, we can piece from other parts of the families.
Of what
We can piece kind of what they
is a
look
bit
like,
dubious.
how big they
They
are.
were just described this year, but from the little we know, they seem to be the basalmost members of the Baryonychinae. So that's where we have them. And that gets us to a new problem. You might notice that I have 3 lineages coming from a single node here. This is called a polytomy. What this means is that I have enough information to say that these 3 are closely related. But I don't have enough information to say which 2 are more closely related to one another than they are to the third one. I could guess, but it would just be a guess. I would have no confidence that my guess is accurate. So instead of saying something that I have no reason to say, I just say that I don't know. Hence the polytomy. And since Cristadosaurus is the only genus in that lineage, I'll start there. But I'm not making any claims about relatedness with my starting with them. Cristadosaurus means crest lizard because it has a sagittal crest on its snout. Something fairly typical for Spinosaurids, which to me means that Beast Flayer and Flesh Ripper were on the table, and they chose to go with essentially generic Spinosaurid as the name instead. I feel like Spinosaurid researchers are not the same breed as those that study Tyrannosaurids. All we have of Cristadosaurus are a couple of their large thumb claws, a few jaw fragments, and some of their lower neck vertebrae. So we know with some certainty that it is a Spinosaurid. The jaw bones alone make that pretty clear. And we know that it comes from Central Africa around the end of the early Cretaceous. It appears to be a baryonychian, though some studies have placed it just outside of the clade. Others would go along with it being part of the Baryonychinae, but not as its own unique genus, because it's indistinguishable from fossils that we have of both Baryonyx and Suchomimus. This guy. And interestingly, if Cristadosaurus turns out to be the same thing as Suchomimus, the genus will be called Cristadosaurus, as that is the older name by 2 months. Wow. And when it comes to scientific names, the older name receives priority. Always. So, even if the older name is a dumb name. And since Suchomimus might be the same thing as Cristadosaurus,
which is one of my favorites.
Suchomimus is amazing. Suchomimus is part of a clade of baryonychian spinosaurids called the Ceratosukopsini, named after Ceratosukopus, which is also part of the clade. Suchomimus appears to be the genus least related to the other two members of the clade. Suchomimus means crocodile mimic, which again works for basically any Spinosaurid, but is a cool name. So enjoy it while it lasts, because we are like one paper away from calling them crest lizards. Suchomimus lived at the same time as Cristadosaurus, the latter part of the early Cretaceous, in the same parts of Africa. And both were estimated to be about the same size, right around 10 meters, around 33 feet. But we can say that with a lot more confidence about Suchomimus, as we have a lot more of the skeleton than we do for Cristadosaurus. In fact, I would imagine that the size estimates for Cristadosaurus are based simply on a comparison of the size of the skeletal fragments that we have to those of Suchomimus. Yeah. And since they're about the same size, we estimate that the dinosaurs were the same size. And if you notice that so far there's nothing different about the two, well, a lot of paleontologists agree with you. So if you just want to start calling this Cristadosaurus now, well, you might just be ahead of your time. For now, I'll continue to call it Suchomimus. And just for the record, might be worse than that. Because while Suchomimus and Cristadosaurus are unique from their relative baryonyx, some paleontologists argue that Suchomimus is just another species of baryonyx, and thus would be subsumed under that genus name. So Suchomimus and Cristadosaurus could be the same thing, and that thing could be just another species of baryonyx. Yeah. And yet, you can see that in recent phylogenies, including ours, baryonyx isn't even considered to be the closest relative of Suchomimus. Hopefully by now, you're seeing why this group is a good one to bring up if you want to start a riot at a paleontology meeting.
And this is why they don't want him to even do this video, because there's so much
and a relatively short but heavily muscled neck. Its thumb claw was particularly huge, and it did have large neural spines and thus a small sail, as you can see here. Not nearly as big as that of many Spinosaurines, but something. And once again, even though many people think that Suchomimus is just Cristadosaurus, and that this creature is just another species of baryonyx, recent phylogenies have placed it closer to the other baryonychians, Rhiperovenator, the riverbank hunter, and Ceratosukopus, the horned crocodile face. Good names, but again, names that would work for any Spinosaurids. Both lived in the early Cretaceous and were found just off of southern England.
He needs the talking points before he leaves. Now.
Got an ad.
Are you talking points using this briefing?
And if it makes you...
So I'm kind of with him. I feel like T-Rex is my favorite dinosaur ever, and it is a little bit like obviously it's my favorite. It's the most famous dinosaur ever. But the reason it's my favorite is not because it's the one everybody knows. No. There's so many things about T-Rex that are fascinating, which we'll do a video on. The thing about, I think what Clint is frustrated with is all the Spinosaurus names, all the Baryonycha names are synonymous with every single one of them. This is crocodile face. Well, so is Spinosaurus. So is Baryonyx. So is all of them. And so Riverbank Hunter. Well, Spinosaurus would have been Riverbank Hunter as well. Crocodile horn face. All of them had protrusions on their face. So, anyway, he's poking fun at it, but he's right. They're
you feel any better?
Exact same
At
name.
first, they were both thought to be Baryonyx as well. And that's not unreasonable. Baryonyx is another early Cretaceous English Baryonychine. If you found some Baryonychine bits in rock layers of this age in England, wouldn't you just assume it was Baryonyx too? Well, after closer examination of those bits, it looks like they are a bit different. Not just from Baryonyx, but from one another. Rhyperovenator is known from some jaw and other skull fragments, as well as some tail vertebrae. And Ceratopsuchops from just the premaxilla and the brain case. But it was basically the whole brain case. And the cool thing about this is that it gave us a real window into the mind of this creature. I mean, we could examine the external structures of the brain. Which structures...
I don't know what he's about to say, but not only could you get it for this particular species, but for probably it would go for all of them. Even Spinosaurinae would be... The brain casing of this particular animal would have shown a lot into the behavior and the eyesight, the binocular vision or non-binocular vision, the smell, the whole brain casing can show a lot of morphology that's going on, not just in the brain case itself, but in the rest of the skull as well. So it would show a lot, not just this particular species, but all of Spinosaurinae.
And a study from this year studying MRI scans of this skull and that of Baryonyx revealed a great deal about the brain morphology and function of Baryonychine Spinosaurus, and allowed us to compare their neural anatomy to that of Irritator, a Spinosaurian that we will discuss here in a bit.
I love it.
This is of particular interest because the Spinosauridae is a very unusual and specialized group of theropods. Their jaw morphology reflects a very different hunting style, and the brain of Irritator reflects these differences as well. So the question remains, what came first, the jaw or the brain? And what we learned from these scans is that while the Baryonychines have the unique jaw morphology for aquatic hunting, they did not have the unique brain adaptations present in Irritator. Their brains were fairly typical for non-maniraptoran theropods, which suggests that the jaws evolved first, and the unique brain adaptations that we will discuss when we get to Irritator came later, and possibly only in the Spinosaurian lineage.
Wow, so that's pretty cool. So the jaws came first, and of course we'll talk about Irritator here in a minute. So I wonder what brain morphology came along with decades, if not millions of years later when Irritator came. I wonder what brain morphology caused him
but
to
we're not ready to move over there
would
just
it be a
yet,
smarter
because
hunter or
there
a
is
more
one
efficient
more
hunter,
clade of
maybe?
Baryonychines that we're yet to discuss. And this is the one with Baryonyx, the namesake of the whole subfamily in it, so we probably shouldn't skip them. But before we get to Baryonyx, let's talk about its closest relative, Iberospinus. From the Iberian Peninsula, the region of Europe where Portugal and Spain almost touch Morocco in northern Africa. Hence the name, Iberospinus, the Iberian spine. Kind of presumptuous given that Valley Bonaventrix, Protothlitis, and several other
There's like
Spinosaurids all
5
come
of
from the
them from
Iberian Peninsula
up
as
in here.
well. And don't
Iberian
worry,
Peninsula.
like almost everything else we've been discussing lately, when they first found it,
Come back to school shopping with me at Didi's Discounts. Definitely love it. Didi's had the deals.
These
thought it was a
ads,
baryonyx.
man.
Yes, Mr. Sherman, everything's baryonyx. But, once again, after closer examination, it isn't one. In fact, while I'm showing it as being the closest relative of baryonyx on this phylogeny, some recent phylogenies have suggested that it might not even be a baryonych. It might have diverged from the other Spinosaurids before the Baryonychine-Spinosaurine split and occupy a place very similar to where we have Valibonum Some paleontologists even argue that it is sister with Camaryllosaurus, which is often considered to be a Spinosaurian. Some even argue that it is the same thing as Camaryllosaurus, and that both of them, if they're actually two different things, diversified before the Spinosaurian Baryonychine split because Spinosaurid paleontology is a mess. I mean, some genera we know only because we found a couple of teeth. You build a phylogeny based on that.
I mean,
and then get in heated
even
fights
putting it
about
in a
paleontological meetings. I mean it.
in the
That's
same
a
as a
literal
baryonych.
Anyway, as you would probably expect, we don't have
Why
anything
put it
approaching a complete skeleton of Iberospinus. But unexpectedly, we do have one of the most complete specimens known of any Spinosaurid anywhere, as well as other fragments from other specimens. So we know more about Iberospinus than we do about most Spinosaurids, which is to say that we know very little about them. This group is such a disaster. But at least we have finally gotten to Baryonyx, which many paleontologists think is the same thing as another Baryonychine named Suchosaurus, which, if true, would make Baryonyx Suchosaurus because of the naming conventions. But for now, let's pretend like Baryonyx
Please don't do
is
that
the thing.
to us.
This group is such a mess that this feels more like a Who Would Win book than a phylogeny video. Okay, Baryonyx, heavy claw versus Suchosaurus, the crocodile lizard. Both were found in the early Cretaceous in England and the Iberian Peninsula. Suchosaurus was discovered first, but discovered is a strong word. They found a few cone-shaped teeth that they assumed to be from some crocodilian, hence the name. It wasn't until much later when Baryonyx was being described that they took a good look at its teeth and went, hey. But we really do have a lot of Baryonyx bones. Enough to say that it was probably between 7.5 and 10 meters, about 25 to 33 feet long, and may have weighed as much as about 2,000 kilos, 4,400 pounds. They may have gotten bigger still. And they didn't have any sort of a large sail. It is a typical Baryonychine in most regards, as evidenced by the fact that the whole subfamily is named after it. And most of the members of that subfamily were initially thought at some point to be Baryonyx. And yes, like most Spinosaurids, they have a big, heavy, curved thumb claw. And that gets us, finally, to the Spinosaurians. All of the dinosaurs more closely related to Spinosaurus.
Wow. So we've learned quite a bit and almost nothing about the anything to do with Baryonychinae. It is, as he says, a complete mess of a biology. Can the Spinosaurinae do any better? I don't know. But hey, I'm going to do a separate video, so look out for part 2. Thank you so much for watching this, and hey, consider subscribing if you haven't. If you love dinosaurs, let me ask you a question. Let me get real quick, real close here. What's your favorite dinosaur? Is it a Baryonyx or a Spinosaurus? Let me know. If it's neither one of them, could it be Triceratops? Triceratopsians are fun. Is it a T-Rex? You would be correct if it was a T-Rex. Is it a Velociraptor? Is it what you think is a Velociraptor, even though those are not Velociraptors? Those are Deinonychus, and those are cool animals as well. If that's true, I don't blame you. Let me know below, what's your favorite dinosaur? You guys have a blessed day. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.